Okay, everyone, now that we have our monster appearing the way we want it, let's go and actually make it happen over and over again, like 10 monsters in the game, and do it with ActionScript instead of adding this layer, which really doesn't accomplish what we want. So, we're going to, before we do anything, of course, rename this file that you should have, number 3. We're going to go to number 4 and say save. And then to start with, first thing we're going to do is delete this layer. And then we're going to go to the actions layer, the first frame of the actions layer. And you're going to press F9, but I have to go the long way. And here's our code so far. So we're going to add some code. So right above this variable that we declared, I'm going to put some spaces. And we're going to declare a new variable. It's going to be variable or var monsters in game. Oops, I hit the caps lock. Monsters in game. And that's going to be a data type of uint. And hopefully you remember int stands for int as an integer, meaning any whole number, no fractions, no decimals, no crazy things. When you put the u in front, it means that their integers are all positive. So these are positive integers. So obviously you can't have -2 monsters in a game, and that's why we use the u. It just makes sense. The next variable is going to be monster maker, and that variable type is going to be a timer, because we're going to create monsters at a certain time delay or interval. The next variable is going to be a container. Actually, we're calling it a container because it's going to function as a container, and the data type is going to be movie clip. Okay, and then inside the initialize game function, we're going to set up the initial values for these. So first we're going to declare that monsters, and be careful with your case here because we've got a capital I and a capital G. So monsters in game is equal to 10. And the reason why we're doing this instead of just using the number 10 when we run our game, if you set it up as a variable, you don't have to go and change code all over the place whenever you're calling out how many monsters you want in the game. You can just change this number 10 right here, and then wherever that variable is used, it'll be 10. So that's why we use variables instead of actual numbers. Just set the variable equal to a number, and then you could always just change that number for the variable, and wherever else that variable is used, that number will be the new number you assigned it. So next one is going to be monster maker, and that's going to be equal to, we already set it up to be a timer, so we're going to say new timer, and timer has a capital T, and the amount of time in between each monster being created is going to be 1,000 milliseconds. So when you do programming, almost always when you're talking about time, it's listed as milliseconds. So you have to remember, if you want 1 second, you need 1,000 milliseconds. So this is going to create monsters every second. And how many is it going to create? Well, here we go, monsters in game. So rather than saying 10 here, we're using the variable monsters in game, so that if we ever want to change it, we can just change the value of that one variable above, and it'll change it throughout the game. And over here, we're going to make our container underscore MC, which we set as a movie clip, and now we're going to say equals new movie clip. If you notice, sometimes we do these things on the same line, and then sometimes we declare the variable and then initialize the number or its value on a separate line. It's, I guess, a little bit just preference there. Then we have to add the child. We have to add the container. So we say add child. And what are we adding? We're adding container underscore MC to the stage. And later on in our code, we're going to fill those containers with whatever graphic we called monster. In this case, a picture of me, just for the hell of it. And then down here, we're going to say monster maker. We're going to add an event listener. It's going to be a timer event, so that it's listening for every time it makes a monster. So it's add event listener, and it's going to be timer event timer event dot timer. And notice up top it threw in some flash things that are important to run the timer event. Okay, so timer event dot timer comma, and then the function we're going to run is create monsters. And then we need something to sell it to start the timer, so we're going to say monster maker dot start, open close semicolon with a, open close parentheses with a semicolon. Now we have to create the function called create monsters. We'll do that right below the drag cursor function. So we're going to say function create monsters. It's an event. And what type of event is it? Oops, pressed the wrong key there. It's a timer event. Void. And then our open close curly braces. And we're going to first declare a new variable called monster. And it's a movie clip type variable, semicolon. Oops, just noticed I missed a semicolon over here. You notice Flash is very forgiving of missed semicolons. Not all programs are like that, but if you see one missing, it's always good to throw it in. And then we're going to say monster is equal to new monster. Now, in our library, I honestly don't remember if I exported the monster for ActionScript. If I didn't, then this will not work. So let's get back to this in a second and go check our, actually we can see right over here it's not. I wasn't sure you could see that until I looked over here. Let's close this out, let's go over here, and we need to export this. So we got to go to properties and check this off. When we made this, remember I said I don't know if we're going to need to export it or not. Now that I'm thinking about it, yeah. And so the class is just going to be capital M for monster, or monster with a capital M. Say OK, say OK. So now go back to our code. Okay, so now that'll work because we're creating a new instance of a class called monster, and we didn't have a class until just now. And where do we want to create these monsters? Well, we're going to say monster.x is equal to math with a capital M dot random with the lowercase r, go figure, open close parentheses. So this is a random generator function or class or whatever statement. And so it's going to create a random number from 0 to 1. That's almost all random number statements work. But we know our stage is 550 by 400. So right here, if we took this number and multiplied it by 550, we would either get a number of 1 or up to 550. So if the randomly generated number was 0.1 and you multiply it by 550, you get like 5. If it's something less than 0.1, it's less than 5. If it's almost 1, you get almost 550. So if we multiply this by 550, we know that it'll be somewhere on the stage, because a number from 0 to 1 multiplied by 550 will have a value of anywhere between 1 and 550. But we don't actually want to use the number 550, because this code will work better if we say stage dot stage width, which is 550. But because we're not using the actual number, if we were to change the width and height of our stage, this code would still work by not using the actual numbers, but by saying, hey, give me whatever the width is, and then of course give me whatever, doing the y now, give me whatever the height is. and you always have to multiply the randomly generated number by whatever width and height you have, because the randomly generated number again only goes from 0 to 1. So we have that. So now it's going to be placed somewhere on the stage randomly. The last thing we have to do is we have to add the monster variable to our container movie clip. So we say container underscore MC dot add child. What are we adding to it? We're adding monster. And this should add our monsters every second to the stage, and it should play the animation flying out at us. And when the animation ends, it should disappear. Now, I'm looking over my code. I don't think I made any typos, but of course if I did, I'll get an error and it'll come back to me and we'll fix it. Well, let's see. But before I run it, I want to save it just in case something crashes, because when you write code, every now and then you could write something and have some infinite loop or something that makes the computer sort of crash when you go to run it. So it's always a good idea to save your file first, then run it. So if it crashes, at least your file's been saved. So here we go. And see, maybe it was a good idea I did that, because something's not working right. Okay, well, I had a little glitch there to my computer, but I think all the code was written well because, or correct, because I played it just now and it worked. So I don't know why I had a little freezing thing there, but again, that's why it's always good to save your file before you go to play it, especially if you just wrote a bunch of code. So if it crashes, the file's already been saved, so I was able to just open or restart my computer, open my Mr. G Shooter Game 4 back up, and everything works. So let's try it. So this is what it's supposed to do after you add the code to create the monsters. And let's try it. And let's try it. There we go. Okay, so one after another, randomly created around the screen, but you can see it starts off really big. And that's because we should have, or I should have, shrunk this down first. So using my free transform tool, I'm going to shrink this down really small, go back to scene 1 and play it again. So you can see they're created randomly around the screen. I would have to click on them to kill them, but we don't have that functionality yet. So right now they're just getting created. That looked like about 10 of them, so that should be about right. So there you go. That's how you create 10 monsters coming out. The next video will be, of course, let's be able to click on them so they can go away when we shoot them. Thanks.